Whether you want more innovation more easily, you are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience, adaptability, and ease necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teams, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead in today's world. Joining me is Dr. Heather Backstrom. Heather is an accomplished executive coach, speaker, author, and facilitator. She coaches leaders in many industries, including finance, biotech, retail, municipalities, aerospace, media, healthcare, and nonprofits. It might have been faster to say where you don't coach. Heather is also the author of the award-winning women's leadership book, Collaborative Confidence: How Women Leaders Can Activate Self-Awareness, Amplify Their Authentic Talents, and Accelerate Workplace Change. She's a volunteer with the Tournament of Roses Association and often spends New Year's Eve on overnight duty in preparation for the Rose Parade. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
So on overnight duty, does that mean you're guarding the floats so that no one messes with them?
Yes, everybody always wants to know about overnight duty with the Rose Parade. The overnight duty varies, and I've been a volunteer since 2012, I believe. And they change our duty every 2 years. So we have the same duty 2 years in a row, and then we roll off onto another committee. So, yes, there are some volunteers out there who are with the floats overnight. I haven't had that assignment yet, but probably will at some point. I have had overnight duty with the equestrian teams where they bring in all of the usually 20 to 30 different equestrian teams, and they all spend the night in their trailers and horses and gear and so forth in a kind of a secluded area not too far from the route. I've been overnight with the equestrian team before. The last 2 years, I had overnight duty at the Tournament of Roses house itself. So in Pasadena, there is a Tournament of Roses house. It's a mansion and donated by the Wrigley family to the city of Pasadena many years ago. That's the headquarters of the Tournament of Roses, of the Rose Parade. And so for the last 2 years, I was at the tournament house for my overnight duty. But I've also spent the night on the Rose Parade route itself, out on a street corner and just kind of making sure everything is okay. So it varies. It makes it kind of interesting and exciting, and it's certainly a unique way to spend New Year's Eve. A tiring way to spend New Year's Eve, but a unique way to do it.
So while everyone else is staying up, dancing, drinking champagne, you are
Gosh, yes.
doing random things and drinking water.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. And then I haven't seen the parade live itself in really years because I'm working New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Uh, and so I go home after my duty ends, usually sometime mid morning, New Year's Day. And there's a local TV station here in Los Angeles who plays the parade on a loop all day long. So I just lay on the couch and relax and snooze and wake up and snooze and have a little snack and watch the reruns of the parade all day long.
I love it. When did you first recognize that integrating your whole self, bringing that into everything that you do, might be a valuable approach?
That is such a fascinating and deep question, Michael. I as an adult, I would say that it started partway through my career as a HR professional. So I worked in corporate human resources for many years and enjoyed the work, for many years. And even early in my career, I was always interested in helping other people, helping leaders and employees understand each other, work well with each other. And as that interest developed, I learned about coaching. And I was also in therapy at the time. So there was, self awareness that was also building and cultivating. I was drawn toward coaching. I was working in corporate HR. So, kind of before I became certified as a coach, before I actually took that step, leading into that step is when my overall awareness as a person was rising and multiplying. And I was drawn to coaching because I did see it as a way for me to bring my whole self to work and for me to help others, to bring their whole selves to work. And then when I went through the training program and to become a certified coach, that experience really just amplified that that bubbling up that was already happening inside of me.
Was did you have any sense that coaching was the only way you could do this, that doing it in the corporate world, HR person, you wouldn't be able to do this?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would limit it to say it was the only way I could do it. As I said, I was in therapy at the time. I was just also exploring my own self interest outside of work, the social activities and other activities that really drew me in and that I felt like a compelled toward. And when we look at work itself, my human resources work, at that time, I was I when I started in human resources, I worked in recruitment and I also worked in university relations. I really enjoyed those. Those felt very positive to me. They felt very encouraging. We were bringing new people into the organization. We were onboarding them. We were creating opportunities for people with the university relations work that I did in human resources. I was not only was I out recruiting recent college graduates, but I also was in charge of the management training program that we had where they came in and they entered a 2-year program. So I oversaw that program. Certainly, that part of bringing my whole self and helping the management trainees, the new grads, also bring them their whole selves, especially in their very first job. Absolutely, there were elements of that. I think for me, coaching just took the work that I was doing as a human resources professional, it just took it to the next level or a deeper level, whichever way you want to look at it, right? It either, kind of lifted it up and deepened it at the same time. I also have always been comfortable being in front of groups, so facilitating workshops or even things like we would have policy, human resources policy changes that we needed to convey to the organization, and we would go out and do presentations and trainings. I was always eager to raise my hand to even go out and present, policy changes or present, facilitate workshops. And even with that work, it was more intuitively, I think, at that point in my life, and now I have a little more education behind this, but intuitively, I understood about how to that the importance of making messages clear to people, making messages relatable to people, listening to their questions, being open to their concerns, being open to resistance. And so those also were elements of me bringing my whole self of recognizing my humanity and also recognizing the humanity of the other people that I was engaged with. So, those were not coaching experiences, but they were experiences within my human resources work where um, bringing my whole self was about interacting with somebody else, was about recognizing the person that they are, recognizing the questions, the resistance, the quandaries, the different opinions that they held.
So then the move from HR into coaching was somewhat orthogonal to the increased understanding of who you are and how to bring that into everything you do.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that. I would say that. And then on the journey, because the journey of becoming a coach, along the way, my human resources work did shift, and it shifted into employee relations work and really centered on conducting investigations, laying people off, doing reorganizations, terminating people's jobs, firing people. So when I look at the arc of my professional life as a HR person, for me, it started out very positive, right? Recruiting, employee relations, cultivating, fostering. And, over time, I went into an area that was, and frankly, I did enjoy it at first. I was learning and it was interesting. And I did get enjoyment out of from it. But as that work of employee relations, laying people off, firing people, et cetera, as that work became more central to my day-to-day life, that's where it really became uh, not aligned with who I am as a person. And then that made my desire to become a coach as well as a workshop facilitator, retreat facilitator, et cetera. That's where my draw to that became even more distinct and more accelerated.
The work you were doing became less and less aligned with who you are at the same time that you were getting a broader and deeper understanding of who you are. And so the pull you were feeling towards coaching and facilitating became even not more strong necessarily, but gained more weight because there was less on
Yes.
the corporate side pulling you that way.
Yes, yes, yeah, you captured it. Yes, perfectly, yes.
Cool. I'm asking this because a lot of people I talk with start out thinking that working, bringing your whole self to work are two
Mhm.
opposites. And especially in the
Mm,
corporate
mm,
world,
mhm.
where the eclecticness that maybe a smaller business or uh, is more more able to do or more sort of expected because we're just a few people. And so, of course, we're kind of
Mm,
quirky too. We're a big corporation
mhm.
and we're all corporate drones. So it, so that's why I'm asking the details to show to get straight for me and your experience, whether that stereotype was holding true or it uh, just kind of happened to be at the same time that wasn't really related. And I'm glad it wasn't related for you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
What was it about coaching and facilitating that was pulling you that?
I think it's aligned, with my values. I think it's also aligned with my and this is also values and my personal interest in always learning and growing and changing. And probably if you look back in my childhood, you could probably find examples of where that got suppressed for me, where my whole self and who I am was like not welcomed or allowed. And then probably examples of where it was welcomed and allowed. So, and there's a part of me who also wonders, well, maybe psychology might have been also a field that I could have easily gone into. So, and I think that is true. I think something in those human services types of professions, though those also would have appealed to me. It just so happens that my first job out of college was human resources. I really actually appreciate that I had that experience. I appreciate my corporate experience. I learned a lot there. I learned a lot of good discipline or practices, learned ways of thinking. Because I was in human resources, learning about various different divisions and different departments and really knowing the whole organization. So I have a lot of regard actually for that opportunity to have worked in human resources. And had I gone directly into, say, a psychology degree and gone into some kind of a practice, I wouldn't have had that experience in corporate. But then again, who knows what that might have led to and what I would have appreciated out of that experience.
The choose your own adventure that life becomes, I'm
I
always
know.
curious
Yes.
that we
Yes.
can't A/B test life, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. I don't know what we'd do if we could go down both paths and see which one
I
had more of the
know. I
outcome we
know. Wouldn't
desire.
wouldn't that be interesting?
That really would be. How do you build cultures where people feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that they do?
I draw from my own experience because I can think of times in my childhood and including my teen years and even early adulthood where where my behavior, my idea, how I came across, whatever it might be, was not so welcomed and not so wanted, or I should have done it differently. Those messages of, oh, you shouldn't have said it that way, or you should have done this. And so now fast forward to, this time in my life when I've had the opportunity to be a coach, and also going back even to my human resources days. And again, I didn't know the term psychological safety then, but I know it now. And I was, I would like to at least think when I can reflect on certain experiences in my corporate life that I was demonstrating psychological safety without even knowing what that term, whether it existed or not, but without even knowing that term. So, psychological safety and also inclusion, making people feel valued and included and noticed and recognized. And with psychological safety, infusing that into cultures and me trying to demonstrate that includes like being willing to admit my mistakes, being willing to admit when something didn't go as well as I had hoped, modeling that for other people, listening to other people's points of view, giving another person's point of view a chance and not just reacting and saying, "Oh, that's wrong." Now, of course, I'm human. I'm certainly not perfect. I that still can happen. So I fully admit to sometimes I'm more reactionary than I would like to be. However, I certainly have grown in that area to be more responsive, responding rather than reacting, listening, asking questions, being curious about a person's point of view, being willing to change my own, point of view. And working with clients, helping them also be open to how they are coming across, how they are reacting to how their words and behaviors and actions influence another person and also influence the whole environment. And how, if they were to shift those, what changes might come as a result of that. If they were to start to ask more questions to understand versus just statements to say no, or I don't agree, or no, we need to do it this other way. But first, being curious, asking questions, and having that open mind to want to understand first. is something that I help clients grow into, as well as the good old adage of put yourself in the other person's shoes. If you were in their shoes, if you had their perspective, if you were managing their department, if you had their pressures, what what would be your thoughts? What would be your point of view? What would be your interest? What would be scared about? What would you be concerned about? So also helping clients understand perspectives of other people is another way that I model that and try to work with clients on that.
When you're first starting working with someone, or down the road, when you discover a block, how do you help the clients find that openness to being able to consider all the possibilities and the different points of view?
Yeah, and it's a process. It's certainly not just a light switch and you just flip it on and suddenly rainbows and butterflies appear and then a person's completely receptive to other points of view, immediately all the time. Yeah, and sometimes it can happen with certain people more quickly than others. So a few avenues that I take with clients is, and I'm thinking specifically about a recent coaching client that I can draw on as an illustration, where this client had a particular opinion about a colleague that was not a flattering opinion, was not a favorable opinion. And I work with the client to help them identify their thoughts and their feelings and their physical sensations when they thought about their colleague. And then we continue to do some more coaching to peel back the layer on the thoughts, the feelings, the physical sensations. We did some mindfulness practices as well. And the more we looked into, for instance, what is the current thought that you have about your colleague right now? And what's the thought that you would like to have? Ideally, how would you like to think about that colleague? So then we had kind of on a continuum, if you will, current state of thought, ideal state of thought. And we did some exercises to try to help support the client in moving down that continuum toward the ideal thought. As I said, we did some mindfulness practices as well, because that can be very, very effective, because mindfulness practices quiet down the amygdala, the fight, flight, or freeze. It opens up the executive functioning. So a person can think more clearly, they can be more resourceful, they can be more creative, they can be more open minded. So that's why we did also some mindfulness practices in that coaching session. And by the time the session ended in that hour, the client really had moved down the continuum. Were they all the way to their ideal state? Not necessarily, but they had made some really significant progress. So that's one example that illustrates a way that I have helped clients, shift their mindset, become more open and receptive to either other points of view or to just somebody in particular who irritates them, who irks them.
When you have someone who are working with you, maybe not, maybe because someone else has told them they have to, maybe on their own, and yet where they are and where they want to be, they believe are the same place. You see
Mm,
that there's either because you're using all of your other points of view on what their experience is to know that that's probably not where they want to be, or because other people are telling you that something isn't working with where this
yeah.
person is. How do you help them open up to what could be and that where they think is ideal might not be as ideal as they believe it is?
Yeah, that's such an insightful question, Michael. And it's a tough scenario. I will say that I have been fortunate that I haven't had a lot of clients who who are of that ilk that you describe. I have had some clients, and it can be tough, when especially I'm thinking again about a particular client who thought she was quite self-aware and was receptive to the coaching, was receptive to our sessions, but thought she was self-aware in terms of her behaviors and the impact of her behaviors on the others in her organization. And I don't think that she was as self-aware as she perceived herself to be. And in those cases, some other avenues that can help is to refer the client to therapy. Now, coaching and therapy, they certainly can be very helpful to be doing in tandem for the client to continue to see, say, me as the coach, and also see a therapist outside from a psychological standpoint. So that can be a very, very helpful partnership, if you will. The client is supported by two different professionals. So that would be an avenue that I would certainly and have presented, pursued, encourage clients to consider. Another is similar. Many organizations, at least larger organizations, have an EAP, an employee assistance program. Again, referring the client to also get support from employee assistance. I've also done role playing with clients before, playing the role of the other person, and also switching roles where I'm playing the role of the client is playing the role of the other person to try to help the client be in that person's shoes. So, you know, and in kind, respectful, yet direct ways, point out to the client that their perception of themselves may be quite different than the perception of, say, their colleagues. And if that's true, then what, client? So presenting that to the client, if the perceptions are different, and let's just play with it a little bit, client. Let's just see. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Let's just play with it. Let's play with the idea that your perception is A, your colleague's perception is B. Then what? So to use that kind of approach as well with a client to help shift them in in creating even a few degrees more of self-awareness.
I'd like to just encourage you them to inhabit, however
Mhm.
temporarily,
Mhm.
other points of view with no requirement that they believe that these points of view are correct. Just as
Yeah.
a thought
Yeah.
experiment to explore what would it be like if this point of view was correct for this
Yes.
person.
Mhm.
And then if they are open to transforming the way they are, they'll go with that. And they'll at least dive into the exploration, even tentatively, perhaps. Even a, even just a little bit can help make the shift. And if they're
Yes.
just not willing to
Yes.
do anything, then they're adults. We adults, we can't force them
Absolutely.
to make the
Right.
change.
Right.
If it's a situation where other people are giving feedback that, hey, this should change, or they're not going to be employed here anymore, then that's something else that can be brought in. But
That
even
is something
then,
else.
if they're not willing to make the shift, then the prospect of having to go find a new job often isn't enough to lead them to be open to those changes.
Sure. That's true. That is that. Yes, and I have seen that. Yes. Yes. Yes, I've seen that. Yeah. Yeah. And I will also add that, another piece of data is a 360, which is pretty standard with most of my client engagements include a 360. And so on those occasions where I have had clients where their self-awareness and their self-perception is quite different than the other people around them. The 360 can be quite revealing as well. Again, the client's degree of receptivity to that feedback can vary, given that their self-awareness and self-reflection is not as perhaps developed to be able to already see those things in themselves.
So, what is the business value of helping employees do all this squishy people internal self-development work?
Right, all that squishy stuff. What's the point, right? Yeah, what's the value proposition? Yeah. Yeah. I think there's lots and lots of value behind this squishy stuff. Retention is one that immediately comes to mind. When your employees feel valued and respected and included and acknowledged, and they enjoy the work. I mean, there is, of course, the work itself. The work itself is giving them meaning and purpose. Then retention, the opportunity for retention certainly increases. And losing an employee and filling that position and having the position empty or temporarily filled in by, say, another employee, there's a lot of cost involved in that. Monetary cost, time, energy. There's a lot that is expended in the departure and the of one person and the onboarding of another. And then who knows how long that time frame is as well. It can be quite lengthy. So retention is absolutely a value proposition in this squishy stuff. Another value proposition is innovation and problem solving. When I feel comfortable to know that I can toss out an idea that might sound ridiculous or do something that, I actually make a mistake, but to know that I'm not going to be called on the carpet, or I'm not at risk of getting written up or losing my job or being scolded or frowned upon, then that increases my creativity and my innovation, and I'm more willing to experiment or to give an idea that might sound on the surface uh, not so desirable. So innovation and problem solving is another value proposition. Another value proposition is it cuts down on all the nasty gossip, that can be pervasive in organizations, right? And gossip can just be like cancerous inside an organization. So if you're treating people well, if the work itself is meaningful to them, if you're treating them as a human and respecting them and acknowledging them, if communication is open and transparent, then that gossip culture, again, I'm not going to go so far as to say it won't exist, but at least we're not feeding the gossip culture in an organization. So that would be another value proposition that I would say. And then a fourth one is the positive gossip, that when the employee is out and about with their friends and family, they're talking highly of the organization that they work in. They're talking favorably about their manager, their leader, their colleagues, the cool stuff they're working on, the project they're involved in. So that positive gossip that an employee just naturally talks about when they're out and about in the world is a value proposition as well.
Yeah, underlying maybe each of these is that the more I'm able to work in the way that works best for me, the less energy I'm expending trying to work in
Right.
some other way. And so the more energy I
Yeah.
have to bring to creating that positive environment, to
Yes.
plug into being creative, to having energy left when I leave work to
Exactly.
uh, talk with people about how exciting the work is that I did that day and how wonderful my team is.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes.
This is how we can build cultures where people feel safe and empowered. There's still can still be fully safe, fully empowered. Bringing our unique talents and everything we do is still be so overwhelmed with all the change and uncertainty
Sure.
that
Sure.
seems to be all over these days. How do you help people find their way through that?
And yeah, you're so right, Michael. Like overwhelm and uncertainty, it just seems to be pervasive. Uh, and no organization, I don't think any organization, no matter its size or its industry, is immune to the uncertainty and the overwhelm that we're experiencing. I think there's when I think of overwhelm, I think of two sides of the same coin. I think one side is the work itself, the content of the work, the volume of the work, the degree of the work. So what is the work that this person is being asked to do? And is it reasonable? Is this person doing the work of two or three or four people? So first part of overwhelm is the job content, itself, which also includes does the employee have the resources that they need to do their job? Do they have the technology? Do they have the funding? Do they have the whatever resources that they need to be able to perform their job? Do they have the infrastructure? And then the other side of the coin for overwhelm is the emotional aspect and the emotional overload of that overwhelm, where the person perhaps is feeling a degree of anxiety. Maybe they're not sleeping so well. They worry a lot. The work is always kind of weighing on their shoulder no matter where they go and what they're doing. So that's why I like to think of overwhelm as two sides of the same coin. One is the job content, the other side is the emotional overload. And I think I think for leaders, it's really looking at both sides of that coin and not ignoring one in favor of the other. So taking a hard look at, okay, is this person or is even this team, if we look even bigger beyond a person, or we look at a team, it is the workload reasonable for what we're asking a person or a team to do? And if not, then what do we need to do to readjust? Do we need to hire another person? Do we need to bring in a temporary staff person? Do we need to outsource a particular, function or part of the job? Do we need to bring in a consultant? Do we summer intern? You can get pretty creative about how to readdress the job content and the volume of a person's job. Then on the other side of the coin, that emotional side, that's that squishy stuff that we were talking about earlier, right? It's about showing compassion, um, listening and like really listening to a person and their overwhelm and helping them work through that overwhelm. It's about being empathetic. It's about remembering that you've been in their shoes, or maybe you are in their shoes at this very moment. So it's attending to that emotional deficit that the person is experiencing. So I think in working with clients, with leaders, with organizations, it's when we look at both sides of the coin, and again focus on both sides, not just one or the other. Because if we focus on just one, we're really only, we're putting on half a band-aid, not a full band-aid, right? Um, you know, so I think it's about needing to be continuously attentive to both the job content and the the emotional aspect of that overwhelm experience.
And to continue your half a Band-Aid analogy, we also want to make sure that we're treating the entire injury. So it may be that it's not just things on the work side that are contributing to the work and emotional overwhelm. There may be stuff outside of work as well.
Sure. Oh, yes. Yes.
It can even, I see all the time where work is a little bit overwhelming. Home life is a little bit overwhelming. Friend life is a little overwhelming. Spiritual life is a little overwhelming. To add all these little bits up, you get a huge overwhelm. And people
Yeah.
can look at it and be like, well, I'm just 5% over on each of these things. If you're 5% over on 20
Yes.
different things, that's 100% over.
Oh, yeah. That is no kidding. That is so insightful. Yes.
And those can oftentimes be even more challenging than if you just have one big thing that is 100%
Mm.
over. Because
Sure.
not only may you not be recognizing that that these are all building up to something huge,
Mhm.
you're also time slicing between this, and all that context switching takes even more energy that you don't have because you're
Absolutely.
already overwhelmed. And so,
Yes.
even if it seems there's just a few smallish things, just the context switching can magnify the impact that those are having to where it the overwhelm becomes overwhelming, even though I'm quote objectively looking at it like, well, those are just a couple tiny things. It shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah. 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 It's like Why it's like, "Oh, you just have a few tiny paper cuts," you know? Like, one paper cut maybe is like, it's your but boy, if you've got, dozens of paper cuts on you on your arm, yeah, it's tough. That's what it makes me think of as you describe these different pockets of overwhelm and how they all, multiply against each other.
And then if after getting all those dozens of cuts, you're swimming in salt water,
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna keep
the
going with this, aren't we?
impact the impact of those is going to really be much more
Yes.
than it might be if you were swimming in fresh water or if you
Yes.
were doing the dishes.
Yes. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Sure, people, Heather, who would like to learn more about how you help people through change, uncertainty, overwhelm, who might like to have you come in and facilitate a workshop to help them work through some shift that they're considering, what's the best way for them to find you?
Sure. There's a few ways. LinkedIn, Heather Backstrom at LinkedIn. And then also my email is heather@heatherbackstrom.com. So that would be another way to find me as well. Those are probably the two most efficient ways to reach me.
That's great. And I'll have those links in the show notes.
Okay, great.
What would you like to leave our audience with today?
Oh my goodness. First, I just appreciate the audience listening. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity for us to have this conversation. Something to leave the audience with is really learning and paying attention to their values. Because I think also values is another aspect of overwhelm that when we don't honor our values, when we, for instance, where we say, "Well, I have a great value around family," but then you're working extraordinary hours, you're working weekends, and when you are home, you're picking up your phone or your device every few minutes to check email. And listen, I hope this doesn't sound like a judgment about somebody who's in a pressure-filled job because I really don't mean to do that. I'm just giving it as an illustration where we say we value one thing, but then our actions demonstrate differently. So pay attention to your values as also another tool, another way of of looking at your overwhelm and also figuring out how to lessen your overwhelm. And then another aspect of values is, going back to my story about my career trajectory and how coaching and my values align with each other, whereas my other work, especially my later work as a human resources professional, there was misalignment. And when there was that misalignment, I was not happy, and I admittedly was not the best employee. I wasn't a bad employee, but I was just, an average employee. So I would leave the idea of values with the listeners to really hone in on one's values and really give credence to one's values, which may lead to making some tough decisions about, that a person may be left with making some tough decisions to truly follow their values. And in following their values, there is great happiness and fulfillment that comes with that.
And even when we're in a situation where it doesn't feel like we can fully or at all honor our values, knowing that we're consciously deciding that and to stay in a
Yeah.
situation for reasons gives us so much grace and ability to make that situation much less stressful than it would be if we were having that internal fight of, well, I have to stay here. It's just still against my values, but I have to stay here. Uh, even in those rock and a hard place situations, there's ways to calm the nerves and calm the anxiety.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And building on that, Michael, I think often a person, and I mean, I'm talking about me as well when I say a person, can feel like they don't have any choices, like they just are stuck. And it's my belief and it's my experience that there's always a way to find an alternative. And it may take some digging and it may take some time, and you may need some support and guidance in finding that alternative. And I really truly believe there's always some alternative. There's some glimmer of something different, even when we feel the most as in the most stuck place um, that we are.
I agree. Whatever shift we want to make, there's a way to do that that is safe for us and for everyone else.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Heather, for being with us today.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you. I so enjoyed the conversation.
I did as well. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. Please let Heather and I know, what shifts are you taking a tiny step towards making today? Thanks, and have a great day.